Hello, this is my blog post number 2 for CSC-355. In this video, I'll be going over some of the other missions and projects that I've completed since the previous video that I made, and demonstrating a couple of other basic games that I've made. If you remember from last video, we left off in the middle of the Get Started with Unity pathway in the Explore Unity mission. And so I'll pick up right where we left off. The next project up was Essentials of Real-Time Audio. And so as the name suggests, this was about incorporating audio into a game and just a couple of different techniques to go along with it. And so there was a game that I'll demonstrate for this. In the actual game, or in the actual tutorial that they wanted us to go through, there was like a kitchen scene. And I had a little bit of trouble loading that in, but I was able to get this workshop scene in there, and it kind of, I was able to, I guess, incorporate all the audio elements that they were talking about. So that's maybe why it looks a little bit different, but nonetheless, I'll start it up and we'll see how it goes. A couple of things to point out would be, first of all, this bucket of paint is what I had the bubbling sound effect on. So you'll notice as I get closer and farther away, the sound gets louder or quieter. And then I also incorporated that little sound effect, that little ball passing through, which will, I guess, well, I'll talk about it here in a second. First of all, with the paint supplies, again, I had the bubbling pot sound effect on there. And then I had this 3D sound effects. So basically, I had a logarithmic roll off. So the closer you are to the object, the louder it is, versus the farther away you are, the quieter it is, like I said. And then I think the logarithmic roll off is just a little bit more realistic, like versus having a linear roll off. But that's just, I guess, my personal opinion. That was just from experimenting with it. That's what I found. A couple of things you can change. Obviously, the volume, make it louder or quieter. And then going over to the sphere object, which was like that sound effect that passed through the scene, kind of the same thing. This one had like some sort of a, I'm not really sure what that is, one of the built-in sound effects there. But I guess the important, again, it's really just the same thing. I had the flyby script that I made, and then yeah, it was basically the same thing. This time I chose linear roll off. And then one of the things that I had to be aware of was this Doppler effect. That's something, I guess, that we've learned in physics, where if you have an object that's sort of in motion and the source of the sound is moving away from the user or the player, it makes sort of an unrealistic sound. So by putting this up to the maximum, it sort of makes a more realistic effect as it's moving through the scene, versus like a stationary one like the paint supplies, we can just leave it at 1. There's obviously some other things in here like the spread. I'm not really sure what some of this stuff does. I know they cover a whole bunch of stuff with audio in the Creative Core pathway, so maybe I'll get into that a little bit later, but I do feel confident with the essentials here in embedding audio into the scene. So that was, I guess, the first project that I worked on. The next one up would be Essentials of Real-Time 2D. This one was pretty similar to Essentials of Real-Time 3D. And I guess I'll just start by saying I do plan to make a 3D game. So I maybe didn't go as in depth with this one as I could have, but I definitely still had some cool stuff here. So first of all, this was the game that I made. I called it Alien Pizza Delivery. It's a pachinko style game. As you can see, as far as like the Unity editor here, it's a lot of similar stuff to the 3D game that I worked on earlier. Again, you can just add new game objects just like this. One difference is that the 2D objects are generally called sprites, which isn't really the case for 3D games. And I guess I'll just show it really quick what it looks like. And you can see the pizza just drops down and gets inside to the alien, which is pretty funny. But one thing I guess I wanted to point out, first of all, I had to change these values here. So like if we started it in a different location up top there, then again, just to kind of show that it works, then we would fail the game. And then if we, again, change this, I guess pay attention to this one. If you can see, if it starts in this location, it will, again, just drop to this middle alien here. But if we change, I was playing around with this and I found it kind of interesting. If we change some of these values, like the linear drag, say we put that to 0.5, and then we run it again, even if we didn't change the initial position, it'll actually drop down here to this alien. And the reason for that is, again, just because the way that this pizza object is interacting with the obstacles based on the properties of these components. In this case, it was the linear drag, but it could have maybe been the mass or something like that. So that was something interesting that I learned. And then again, just also, I guess I wanted to point this out. It is like a 2D, so it's a little bit different of a view, but if you click this button here, it sort of switches it. So you can see it's sort of built off the same, you're sort of building off the same thing. It's just that the view and all the different objects are just crafted a little bit differently, I guess. But again, I plan on coming up with a 3D game. One of the things I wanted to kind of cover was like, in this would have been like to have the user be able to choose where they want to drop it versus me having to like change the position value. But again, I just didn't really get to that, and I'm hoping to maybe get to that a little bit later, maybe in the UI missions or something like that. But that's what I wanted to cover for that. The remaining mission and projects that I had left were all like informational. There were no other games that I wanted to demonstrate. So first of all, starting with the real-time industry. As you can see, there were 2 tutorials here. The first one was the real-time production cycle, which would be, there's actually 4 phases to that. So there's pre-production, which is, planning and getting everything prepared for when you get into the next phase, which is actually production, which is where you're actually like building your game. And then the next phase would be post-production, where you're making sure everything is in order and deploying your game. And then the final one is operations, which is maintaining your game after it's been deployed. And so we learned about that in this first tutorial. And then the second one was roles and careers for real-time creators. They talked about 2 different sort of pathways or aspects of game design. One being programming, which is, making sure all the different elements of the game interact with each other in the right way to make the gameplay feel really nice. And then the other one would be more of a graphics or artistic side of it, which is, making the game look nice, making all the elements look convincing. I guess as a computer science major, I kind of identify more so with the programming side of it, but I do recognize that you sort of need both aspects in order to create a game to create a good game. And so that wrapped up the Explore Unity mission. There was only one other mission in the Get Started with Unity pathway, and it was called Learn Unity. And again, all informational stuff. One of the things that I found most useful was sort of the resources that you can use. So this Unity documentation website here, I thought was really cool. Mainly, well, there's just everything, any resource that you need here. If you had a question, there's a search bar here, you could type it in, or you can just kind of explore, like, say I wanted to learn more about audio, kind of like I said earlier, I could, get a little overview here and even, go kind of more in depth with some of these things as well. And then say I had a specific question that I couldn't find here, I could go to Stack Overflow. I've used this website extensively throughout my entire time in college. So say I had a question about the Doppler effect, I could just type in like Unity Doppler effect. And I have to prove that I'm a human here, 1 second. And then you can see here, like, a couple people have asked questions about it. So you can just see what this person asked and then read along. Maybe you had the same question and then you can get the answer there. Again, super helpful website. I plan to use it throughout this course. And I'm glad that there's a lot of Unity material on there. And then beyond that, there wasn't, I guess, a whole lot with this mission. We learned about game jams a little bit. And then we did, I guess, develop a learning plan, but I feel like we as a class already kind of went over that a little bit in our character build. So I've felt pretty comfortable with all of that stuff. And yeah, that brings us to the end of this mission, and actually the entire pathway, the get started with Unity pathway I now have completed. So that's gonna end it for this video. I guess in the next video, I'm not 100% sure what I'm gonna go after yet. I think the junior programmer looks really cool to me. So I might start out with that one, but I guess I'll make that decision over the next week or so, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.